This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, light, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. They do an incredible job at Purdy Insurance. Making sure you're fully insured and customer service saving you money. It is all at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Mike DeCourcy, one of the best in the business, whether it's Sporting News or BTN, Fox, Bracketology, whatever. Mike, welcome back. So great to hear from you.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well. I finally got a chance the other night in the Auburn-Tennessee game to really watch Auburn play. I've been traveling a little bit. And so in watching them, they impressed me in a lot of ways. What do you like about Auburn, and do you see any holes in their game?
Yeah, what I like, first of all, is that Johni Broome, who's in his third year after transferring over from Morehead State, is just a magnificent player. And he's worked so hard. When he was at Morehead, I got a chance to see him in the Ohio Valley Championship game. I think they played Murray State that year. So this had been about 3 years ago. And I thought he was a really nice young player, big, strong, great hands, good around the rim. And that, it makes you a good college player, but it doesn't get you much after college now. The game has changed. You have to be able to play on the entire court. You could be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and maybe if another Kareem came along, you could still be that. But it's harder now to just live in those 6 to 8 feet around the basket. And so Johni has spent the last 3 years developing himself from that player into the one we see now that is effective everywhere on the floor and dominant nearly everywhere on the floor. He's averaging a double-double. He's a great passer with 3 assists a game. He blocks shots. He's nearly at 3 a game. I've seen mock drafts that don't have his name in them, and I just can't imagine that 30 NBA teams would pass up what he could give them.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. And you have to have at least one of those guys, and I'm not sure. You have to have at least one game-changing NBA guy that the pros value and see it. He's a little older because he's in his 5th year, but I just have to believe that somebody on the upper side of that draft, 20 beyond, that wins games actually, and it doesn't just chase lottery picks every year, has to see what he does and say, I'm taking him. The way the Heat took Jaime Jaquez a few years ago,
right? Yeah.
And so that's what I believe in most. I like their guards. I think that if they are to win it, they will be a little different at that position than pretty much every champion has been, or every recent champion. There is almost always a dominant point guard. Now, they aren't all future NBA guys, but they're always dominant. I mean, you look at various teams over the years. DeJuan Harris from Kansas in 22. Yeah. A guy who played nearly the entire game, ball was in his hands at the start of every possession, always made great decisions. Isn't going to probably play in the NBA, but was a terrific college player, and still is. So you can win it with that guy, but they don't really even have that guy. They share that position. Tahad Pettiford is a very talented young man, and if they said it's all yours, Tahad, I'd say maybe you can do that with him. But they don't do that. He only plays 20 minutes a game. He shares the position with Denver Jones, Miles Kelly. They all have a little piece of it. If you look at their assist numbers, they don't anybody. I mean, Johni actually leads the team in assists.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
They don't have anybody, any guard, averaging more than 2.8 a game. So not even one guy averaging 3. And so that's what I would worry the most about them is usually in those games, like when you get to the Elite Eight level, if it's a great opponent, and then certainly at the Final Four level, those games are so hard to win. And usually you have to have a guy that you really trust to get you through those moments. And 2023 Connecticut really didn't have that guy for the longest time. And then Tristan Newton kind of took it over in time at the end of the year for them to win that one. And then by his last year, he was a star. Not an All-American, but one of the best ones in his league and certainly good enough to win another national championship.
What is it have you seen in the commitment now in the SEC that's taking them from being good to very good to now being outstanding? When you've talked to people there, what's the commitment been like there now within that conference to create this?
Well, there are some things that I really quarrel with Greg Sankey about when it comes to basketball. His continued push to expand the field, for instance.
Right.
And that always, to me, reflects a tone deafness about, you're not putting 68 teams in the football playoff, and the reason you're not is because there aren't 68 that can win it.
That's right.
And or even have a chance. But he comes with the idea that a couple of years ago, the 31st at large baseball team or whatever, the last one, it was Ole Miss, I think it was, went out and won it. Oh, well, look, they can do it. So basketball is not the same as baseball either. No. They're all different. We're not missing anybody that can go far by not having more than 68. So I disagree with him on that. But where I really admire him is that, I guess it's around 8 or 10 years ago now. I don't have the exact timing. They hired Dan Leibovitz to run to be their associate commissioner for basketball. Dan is now with the Big East. Because I think it was a geography thing for Dan. He wanted to live back closer to home, and so he left for the Big East. But he did some really excellent work when he was there. They hired Mike Tranghese, the former Big East commissioner, as a consultant, and he did some outstanding work. And I have to give credit to the people that are in charge now, too. But they built the foundation of what SEC basketball needed to be. Better coaches, more focus on recruiting, more focus on scheduling properly. I thought that this year they took that to the next level with the way they scheduled. And it was it was brilliant. You look at Auburn, Alabama, the two best teams in the league. I mean, they played everybody short of the Knicks, Steve. I mean, they were not. There was no fear. There was complete. We can deal with it, and they both did really well. But I mean, Alabama took some L's, but Auburn didn't take many, and they're both in great shape. They're right now would be a 1 seed on my NCAA tournament bracket. So that's where it began, and then on down the line. I mean, Florida has a great metrics, and they've got a great record, and everybody believes in them as a team, and maybe with good reason, but they haven't beaten hardly anybody, Steve.
I know.
Their record is nothing compared to some of the other teams out there. They played like the 243rd toughest non-league schedule.
Yep.
And I don't have a problem with that if that's what you think you need to build your team. But I think it ought to be reflected a little bit more in where you eventually wind up. And the league might do enough for them if they do well enough to compensate for some of that. But their league schedule's easier than everybody else's too. A week ago, someone asked me about this when I was on FS1 about the SEC and how many teams they'd get and how high they'd be seeded. And I looked at everybody like in the top 5 at that point: Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, and the 2 Alabama schools. And how many of the games did they have against one another? And Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee all had 5.
Right.
Kentucky had 4. Florida only had 3. So they're playing the municipal course while everybody else is playing Augusta National.
Exactly.
Tough municipal course, but still.
Yeah. No, exactly. Watched Houston, Kansas the other night. It was a great win for Houston, especially the way it played out. Defensively, you've seen a lot of really good defensive teams out there, and I thought Houston last year was a great defensive team. How good defensively is this Houston team, and do they have enough offense?
Well, that's the issue for them. It's been the issue lately for Houston. Last year, they probably didn't have enough, but then when their star point guard was injured in the Sweet 16, they definitely didn't have enough. And that's probably been the problem for them ever since they made the Final Four in 2021, that they have among the best defensive teams. But is their offense good enough? And from an efficiency standpoint, the numbers say it is. But I guess the question is, like, to do what? Is it good enough to win it? I don't think so. Right. I just, I look at it and see deficiencies that probably keep you from winning it, because I don't see the creativity at the same level for them. I mean, there's a reason why they're 299th in assist rate. I mean, they don't pass the basketball and create opportunities well. What they do is they drive it down your throat, they get it on the rim, and they are going to get more than their fair share of those. I mean, they're 11th in the country in offensive rebound percentage. It's what they have to be, because they don't have a Jamal Shed now. Right. They have good players, but they don't have super creativity there.
Yeah, I mean, no question. Big Ten. Michigan State's number one. Got a chance to see him in person 2 weeks ago. What has made them a really good, solid team without really a star player?
What it is, I think, is the number one quality that has made them great is the willingness to buy in to what Izzo wants to do and to what this team needs to do to be exceptional. Because what it means for nearly everybody is you don't play a lot. I mean, not like the places where they have a 6 or 7 man rotation, and if you're one of the better players, you're getting 28 to 32 minutes a game. They're very good players, very good basketball players are getting 18 to 20. And that's unusual in today's basketball because, first off, it's hard to get 10 good players that can help you win. And secondly, it's hard to get 10 players who are willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so usually you have to trim it down because you may want to play a guy 16 to 18 minutes, but he's not buying it, so you don't play him much at all. That's and maybe he transfers at the semester break. That happens now. So that their willingness to buy into that has been phenomenal. And there's also been the fact that Tom has been willing to look at this and not say, and I think he got caught up, maybe it's a reaction to what happened a year ago when he got caught up into saying, okay, these are my guys, these are the guys I'm riding with. And whatever happens out there, this is how we're riding. Because these other guys, they're not ready yet. That's how he dealt with Xavier Booker, for instance, a year ago. Right. While Chris Cooper wasn't playing that well. They weren't getting much out of either of their regular bigs, and he didn't play Xavier Booker much until the end of the year. Now, it's more like if one of the big guys isn't playing well or one of the guards isn't playing well, I got 2 other guys that can do that job. So it'll be their night. And the guys have been pretty adaptable to that. And so they're most always playing with somebody who's having a good night because they'll suppress the minutes of the guys who maybe aren't on it and elevate the minutes of the guys who are.
Anybody else in the Big Ten that you look at and say, you know what, they can go some distance in the NCAA tournament? When you look at them, they may have some. In other words, they can somehow get out of the first weekend. Who would that be?
Oh, I think that both Maryland and Illinois, obviously Purdue, they're going to be a threat. They're going to be matchup dependent. They have what they need to do well, but that it's going to be very matchup dependent. There are certain teams that defend the post well, for instance. You don't want to face any of those. You want to face teams that are relatively lean on the interior, and preferably if they're both tall and not lean, then you really want to play them if you're Purdue. But Illinois and Maryland both have really talented players, and Illinois' guys are a little bit more erratic from game to game. They're either absolutely astonishing or how did that happen kind of games for them. And for Maryland, it's more a function of not being 40-ish. You know, I always say nobody's ever good for 40 minutes.
Right.
But how long are your bad stretches? And Maryland's tend to be longer and or more poorly timed than some others. I think lately they've improved on that. They did have a bad stretch, poorly timed, against Indiana on Sunday, but then took advantage of some poor decisions by Indiana and their own ingenuity and competitiveness, and the Terps were able to get home with a really nice road win.
Yeah, look, athletically, Illinois has incredible athletes out there. And I see Maryland, and Maryland now, I've watched the last couple of games, really impressed. What do you think the West Coast teams have added and not added to the conference at this point?
Well, I think they've been very compelling, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think, first of all,
I do too.
I've been to 3 of the 4 venues out there, and I love every one of them. I mean, really love, for various different reasons. I mean, Pauley, all the history, and I've always said, like, if my version of heaven would be the area outside Pauley on a January Saturday. Like, I could stand there for eternity because the weather is perfect and everybody's excited about basketball, and like that would be pretty ideal place to be. It's a great place to be to watch a game. And then the Galen Center is perfect size. Everybody has a good seat. I've only been there when they were, when the games were good, like Arizona and UCLA and people like that. So they were really engaged, and so I really like that. And I love what they call Alaska Airlines Arena now up at Washington. Yeah, it's a great old building. It's got all the charm and the spirit of something that's been around forever, like Cameron or Allen Fieldhouse or something like that, or the Barn up at Minnesota. Theirs is one of the great buildings, and maybe one of the underrated great buildings. It's a phenomenal place. So they've added 3 of the best venues in college basketball. I have not ever been to the arena at Oregon. I was in the old one, the one that always felt like it was about to fall down. I was at MacArthur Court. I was there, not for a game, but for a practice. Yeah. But I've never been to the new one. Right. But I think they've all added that charm and that spirit. I think that they've added 2 outstanding basketball teams in Oregon and UCLA that'll probably make the NCAAs. USC has shown that they will compete.
Yes.
They just don't have enough skill. Yep. But they have some really competitive guys, and when they go on the road, they don't give up. I mean, their road win against Illinois will be one of the best in the Big Ten, and honestly one of the best in the country for a team that probably doesn't make the show.
Right. And I agree with that. And saw them play at Nebraska. Now Nebraska's is struggling along, but I thought USC played great in that game too. In watching that game,
right.
What will you look for here in the month of February? Anything that that normally you try to keep an eye on that's a standard for you to give you at least some clues about March?
Yeah, I think honestly, Steve, usually in January, what happens is there are a bunch of upsets, usually reflected by how people look at the polls, and people say, "Well, we've never had this before, and it's the most amazing season." And I'm like, "No, we do this every year. Every year we look through January and teams get upset, and then February is where the great teams start to separate themselves." That's when the teams that are really special start to really show how great they are. If you see a significant upset, it's usually a January when the better team, the legitimately great team, looked at the calendar and said, man, it's still 2 months till March.
Right.
that sort of thing. And that doesn't happen in February because they know March is right there. It's on the doorstep. And so not that there are never any upsets, but I think you'll start to see like who's really special. Michigan, and also some of it is because of the way games are scheduled.
Yes.
That a lot of the best games are placed into February. The ones that should be the best are placed into February because we've got one football game left on the entire calendar.
Right.
We've got the Super Bowl, and that's it. The AFC and NFC championship games are done. The college football playoffs over. So the networks working with the league say, okay, give us a couple of Purdue, Michigan States. Give us your Duke, Carolina, which we'll get the first edition of on Saturday. Those games start to pop up, and that's when you see, like if Duke beats Carolina, Carolina's not great. I saw them on Tuesday,
Right.
but they'll bring their best effort. And so if Duke takes them down, that'll be a statement. And those are the kinds of things that you see through February. How good is Michigan State? Well, they're on a heck of a run, and I like their team a lot. But they're about to face challenges that they haven't faced since November as they go through the tougher part of the Big Ten. And that's what we'll see all through the month and all through the sport.
Always a pleasure. Love getting your perspective as always, Mike. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
That is the great Mike DeCourcy. God, Mike and I go back a long time, and my respect for him just grows every year. One of the best. We'll come back more in a moment as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.